Hey there. How many of you know what HDP is? Or even more importantly, have tried using it on your CNC, say for making signs? Well, if you are interested in finding out more, stay tuned. Okay, kind of want to walk through first before we get started on the sign, just talking a little bit about what is this Hdpe. It's actually a high density polyethylene product used for a lot of different things, actually. For piping, for bottles and plastic bottles, cutting boards, just all sorts of things. Now, what I want to use you for, because I had seen it on YouTube, the form of Hdpe that is made by King Color Core, and it actually comes in different colors, and it's 3 layers, as you can see in the picture here. This one, we'll call it the green, white, green. The top layer has green, the middle's white, and the bottom's green. Now, these colored layers on the outside are about 0.05 inches thick. So once you carve through that, you can then start making things with it. King Plastics actually is the one that makes the color core, and as you can see, it's used by a lot of different things, a lot of signage. So these tri-colored pieces are great for making signs. The reason I was interested in it is because a lot of the stuff I do for signs and woodworking and stuff, I would guess that 30–40% of the effort and time is spent designing and cutting the sign out, but over half is spent sanding, painting, finishing. When I really thought, wow, this would be really cool to be able to cut a sign and basically it's done. I don't have to finish it. It's ready to go. Don't have to paint it. Don't have to fill in the letters with color. So I wanted to give this Hdpe a try because a lot of the stuff that they use it for is signs. I've seen a few YouTube videos on it, different approaches. As everything, you got to do it yourself and give it a try. What is interesting, I did find a local supplier here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area where I can go down and get it. They sell it in only full sheets, 48 by 96, and I can't remember the exact price, but it seemed like it was $367 for a sheet. And then it comes in different thicknesses, so it has 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, and 3/4. But you look at a sheet, a 3/4 inch sheet, and that bugger weighs 120 pounds. And the guy on the salesman on the phone warned me. He says, this stuff is heavy. And I thought, my God, 120 pounds. And then I looked up what is traditional plywood, 3/4 inch, and that is about 60 or 66 pounds. And I don't know about you guys, but I find it challenging wrestling a 4x8 sheet of plywood in my shop at times. Just muscling it around, it's bulky. I just couldn't imagine this Hdpe, a full sheet of that. Man, that's got to be tough to maneuver around. Anyways, they did sell it a little bit on Amazon for a while, but there would be small sheets, 12 by 12. I did happen to find a site called Inventables. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with them. They make the carve machine, as shown here. They were one of the ones I looked at before I got the CNC I have now. I did have a desktop version like this, except I didn't go with the carve. I went with the Shapeoko. Used that for about 1.5 years and I really liked it. That's when I upgraded to the Cam Master. But you go to there and go to shop and go to materials, and they have plastics. And they have Hdpe, and it comes in different colors. But here's a 2-color. Here's a 2-color black and white. So So this is the black, and turns out I did order some from them, and it's made by ColorCore, the same company. So yep, the King ColorCore, unique 3-layer, high density, and they have it in different sizes. They do not have 3/4 inch, they have 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch. And so for here, for example, you can get a 12 by 24 inch, 1/4 inch, and a 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch, but 1/2 inch only goes 12 by 12, at least on this color. Different colors come in different sizes, so if you want 12 by 24, excuse me, looks like the blue does come in 1/2 inch, 12 by 24, and that's the one that I got some of that. I will tell you, I did make a sign with the 1/4 inch, and I found that to be a little bit of a challenge, and here's why. Is you got to remember what you're dealing with, these 3 layers, right? A 1/4 inch, and you're doing V carving, right? And the V carve is going to go in so deep, depending on how wide the line is. Well, one, it wants to, if you get your letters too big, it's going to cut right through the entire 1/4 inch material, unless you put a flat depth. On fine lines, it may not cut through that top blue layer. So you really have to kind of watch which V-carve blade you're using, whether it's a 45, a 60, or 90. You have to think about that and the width of the lines, and sometimes put a flat depth in. I decided going forward that I will probably go with the 1/2 inch, simply to make it easier to think through how deep it's going to go. 1/4 inch just doesn't give you a lot of room to play with. So anyways, that is what Hdpe is. This is where I currently get it, from Inventable site, and seems to be working good. And I'll go through and we'll do a demo on the blue sign I made for the pool. Hey there, wanted to walk you guys through how I set the sign up for the Hdpe demo. Got one called Pool Rules Wide, and I set that up as 11 by 23. I did get the plastic from Inventables, like I showed you earlier. It was 12 by 24. Turned out it was 11 7/8 by 23 7/8, so I set it up appropriately in here. It's pretty close to almost exactly a 1/2 inch thick. I do it off the material surface, and use the lower left corner as the XY datum. And it's single-sided. I'm getting this message because I do have tool paths already set up, which I'll show you in a minute. The design for this, I am not very artsy. I kind of just looked on Etsy and saw this one, and I purchased it. I think it was like $2.99. I do have it saved off into my clip arts area over here. And I don't know if you guys use clip arts for your own library, but I tend to use it a lot for things that I think I'm going to use more than once. Use it in the future, like a Harley Davidson, got a Clint Eastwood. Having it here, I can click on it and immediately bring it in and resize it. Get rid of that. So I've got the pool rules that I bought, and then I added a hole at the top and the bottom. The reason I added one at the bottom as an afterthought, because once I have the first original sign, this stuff tends to flex, warp, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't seem to lay flat, especially when you put it out on a hot cedar fence and the sun hits it half the day. What I found is you can bend it right back. It's very flexible. It doesn't crack, doesn't break. It's supposed to be UV resistant, heat resistant. It's supposed to be really durable, except it does bow. And I thought, oh, I'll put 2 screws in, one at the bottom, one at the top, and that makes it lay perfectly flat. You need to look at this design too, because it's got a lot of things that I didn't realize until I started cutting it. Some things are very thick. pool rules is very thick. This water is going to be thick. This sun is going to be very thick. And what I found is speeds and feet. You really need to slow your bits down to about 9 to 10,000. By default, mine were all set to 15 to 18,000 in the tool database, and that is just way too fast. It was actually melting the plastic versus cutting it. So really slow it down. We'll get into that. The other thing I should mention is that I first tried a 90-degree V-bit, which is usually that's the one I start with for most things. And I didn't like the looks of that because remember, you have this layer of blue, the 0.05 thick, that it was cutting that at an angle. I wanted a crisper cut. So I found 60 degree to be my preference. Everybody's different, but my preference is a 60 degree. Just an example of the depth thing that I'm talking about is we're going to do this whole thing with a 90 degree, for example. And start depth of 0 and just cut it. Now watch this pop-up message. It comes up and says the material thickness is 0.5, maximum tool depth is going to cut at 0.606, and I'm going to say OK. What it's doing is it's, in order to get these deep areas, or wide areas I should say, it's cutting too deep and it's cutting all the way through the plastic. So you have to set a flat depth. I think, okay, so fine, we'll just go in and set a flat depth on this. And that fixes that. Let's go halfway through, 0.24. Calculate, reset, and preview it. And you think, cool, it's done. Look at that. It's perfect. 1 bit, 90 degree, we're done. Wrong. Guess what happened? See these little areas like here on this note? That line right there, it didn't cut through the blue. Because 90 degrees is so wide, it barely got its little nose in there and didn't even cut through the blue. Tested it with a 60. 60 doesn't cut through these small lines. Had to go to 45. So not only with this Hdpe do you worry about how deep it is, which you normally do anyways, but you have to make sure it's deep enough. So when you have a sign that has both thin and thick, you're kind of forced to do multiple things. And that's what we'll walk through, what I ended up doing. So I delete that. What I did is I used the 60 degree starting point on all the stuff you see highlighted, but not those two thin lines. Those I'm going to do a 45. I set the 60 degree at 0.24 flat depth and used a 1/4 inch clearance tool, and then I used an 1/8 inch. And if you look at the 60 degree, for example, I have it set at 9,000 RPM at a feed of 60 and a plunge of 25. And it worked really good at the speeds and speeds and feeds, whatever you say. So that worked good. So if we calculate that out, and I did use climb, so I'll reset that and we'll just take it one step. So the first clearance is the 1/4 inch, and it goes through and cuts the big areas. And get into the little smaller areas, I used a 1/8 inch and it got a little more. And then we'll use the 60 degree, preview that, and it cuts the rest of it. And then 45 was the next step, and to do those two lines. Well, I did those, and guess what? There was a certain area, especially right in here, even the 45 wasn't clearing it deep, wasn't going deep enough here. And somewhere down here it was the same way. So what I did is I set a start depth of 0.001. That forced it to go deeper at the starting point. And it just worked good. But it was trial and error. And when I preview that, it came out fine. And then we'll preview the holes at the top and bottom. So it wasn't, the sign was easy to create. It just took a little trial and error on what bits to use, because this sign specifically had such a wide variance between very thin and very thick items. And I didn't want to, plus I wanted to go, you know, deep enough through that blue plastic. So I really was forced to use a 45. I possibly could have used a 45 on everything and just used the clearance method. But I opted for the 60-45 mix. So that was the setup in VCarve Pro. Once again, you could use Aspire, you could use desktop, you could use easel, Fusion 360. Nothing fancy about specific to this software that I have. I happen to have VCarve Pro. Okay, let's head out to the shop and start cutting this thing. Get over to the CNC here. I want you to pay attention to those pegs coming out. Those are actually bench dogs from Festool's MFT system. The holes are drilled with the CNC and it's guaranteed to be 90. So I just set a board in and I know exactly where the XY point is. It's pre-configured in the machine, never have to measure it. I did chamfer the edge on this sign, if you notice, ahead of time. Just makes it easier that way. I use painter's tape for my hold down method right now. I may change. I have double-sided carpet tape type stuff, don't like that. I have about a dozen different types of clamps. Those work good at times, but this tape just seems to work so much better and so easy. And the two benefits I get from it is I never have to worry about running into a clamp, which I have done, and I don't have to use tabs when I do a profile cutout because the tape holds it. So I don't have to sand tabs off. And it holds extremely good. If I can figure out how to spray with one hand. As you can see, it's going to hold down good. We're going to use a 1/4 inch bit and we'll get that in there. I will mark the height of the Z point for that bit, and like I said, I'll pull the cellophane off. Other than that, we should be ready to go and start cutting away, and you can watch a little cutting. I'm going to go ahead and change the bit here over to the 60-degree V bit. It's an Amana one. Nothing special about it. You can use any 60-degree V bit. Don't tell anybody that I took my sling off. It was just getting in the way too much. I just got to be careful. I will measure the Z height with the touch plate before we take off again. Other than that, we should be ready to go. Okay, the sign is all done cutting. I am sorry I left out the part with the 45-degree bit, but I'm sure that'll be okay. The sign came out extremely clean and nice. Really surprised how clean it came out. There were definitely some small threads, like little hairs, that I needed to go in with a sharp chisel and scrape. It took about 5 minutes to completely clean it up. The nice part is I did not need to stain, paint, sand, finish, or anything. It was a quick 5-minute cleanup and it is ready to hang. It really came out nice. I definitely like how this Hdpe works, and I will definitely use it again in the future. It isn't for everything, but for a sign where you just want to get a nice pretty sign out the door, it's definitely the way to go. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video.